start. So we should probably wait for Jim to get back. Okay. So you mentioned you're looking to get more into front-end development, and then you currently own your own company, sort of looking to do your own thing. Oh, you don't know anything about it? Oh, this is perfect then. All right, we're just gonna get started. So welcome. Again, sorry for the technical mishap, but today we're here to talk about navigating the front-end ecosystem. So I'm Ben Hong. I'm one of the lead front-end developers at Politico. So I help them to build their core website. And then what also a lot of people don't know is we have a professional service site as well. So building information as a service applications. So one of the things they have is like a pro mobile app. And so I help to build that using React Native. And so I help to build a lot of their web technologies there. And so many thanks to Structural Group for hosting us today. It's nice to be able to bring a meetup group down into the Columbia area because a lot of the things I host are up in Arlington. So it was nice to get over here to Maryland. Do you have any announcements you need to make? Okay, good stuff. Okay, so a little bit about Front End League. The reason this was sort of a brainchild between Jacob Schatz and I, and so unfortunately he's not able to be here today because he's in Delaware at the hospital with his family. But he is one of the first front-end developers of GitLab, which, if you're not familiar with, is like a competitor to GitHub, so repository control. And so he's done a lot of work as far as like hiring and building out the team there. And so him and I, one of the things we noticed is that front-end development is one of those things that it's really hard to sort of not only get into the field, but then figuring out where to go from there. And so we decided to create this to help sort of fix that problem that we have in the industry. So as far as front end, what is front end when you hear front end development? What does that mean to you? So I guess from people out here, what does front end development mean to you when you hear about it?
More like the visual side of the computer.
Okay. Yep. Anybody else?
It's everything I don't do. The user side.
So user side, okay. Any like technologies that jump out to you? Vue, okay. Bootstrap, okay. Okay. Any other things about front end that kind of jump out to you when you're thinking about it?
User experience.
User experience, all right. All right, so this is a pretty good list. And so, so the thing I want to emphasize with front-end development is that it's kind of a very interesting animal as far as the development field goes, because it lives in sort of this realm of like development, coding, and so you nailed it on the head there with user experience and visual design. And so as we can see here, so visual side of the internet, that's sort of more visual design, user experience, right? We have user side, again, more user experience. Your Vue, your Bootstrap lives a little bit in here between user experience, user experience and design. And development, so lives a little bit in the middle. Angular is more of a development thing. Material, again, kind of sits in the middle here. User experience, obviously, here. DOM. And so what we can sort of extrapolate from this is that front-end development is a very complex topic. And so what a lot of times from, I guess, in my experience, for people from the back end who aren't as familiar with it, they generally see front end as summarized within like the three technologies of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But with this Venn diagram, one of the things I wanted to illustrate is that there's a lot more to it than, because again, from a coding language perspective, HTML and CSS in particular are very easy to write, right? But there's a lot of complexities and nuances with it that is one of the reasons why they are specialties in it of themselves. And so one of the things here, there was a tweet about this. This is the React roadmap. It's really small, don't worry, we're going to zoom in on it. But basically, this is like encompasses what it takes to become like a good React developer. And so, oh, that's bad. Okay, well, so as you can see here, there are a lot of different things that come into front-end development now, right? In the old days, when the web first started, it really was the case that if you knew HTML and CSS, you pretty much were your own webmaster, and you could do pretty much all the basic design stuff you needed. You didn't need that much complexity. But with browsers getting more powerful and hardware being able to do more, clearly front-end has started to take on a lot of the things that back-end used to be solely responsible for. And so you can see here that as far as like, there are all these specialties and things to learn about when it comes to front-end development that have made it really its own right as far as being a specialty. And so, looks like these are just out of order. But you can see here, so it starts with the HTML, CSS, JS, but then as you break it out into it, there's all these things as far as build tools, different styling tools. There's architecture when it comes to your styles as well, how you manage state management. All these things come into play when it comes to sort of traversing the realm of front end. And so that's why the tweet that sort of got this popular was just like front end is quote unquote simple. And clearly, as you can see here, there's just so much going on these days that you could no longer just call yourself adequate in front end just because you knew HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. There's clearly a lot going on these days. So yeah, that was supposed to be the other way around. Oh, there you go. That worked correctly. So generally, the thing I like to say is that front-end developers, we're the liberal arts majors, Zynga, LiveJournal, or whatever 90s sites. We used to hack these things. We're like the misfits of the software development community because most of us don't have a computer science background. So I myself, I have a psychology degree. And so my entire career is self-taught and just hacked together over like different projects and just things I've learned over time. And a lot of front-end developers are that way, right? Contrasted to a lot of back-end developers who have more classical training, and which gives them like the fundamentals for like good software architecture and those things. We're sort of like the misfits when it comes to software development. So let's talk about the front-end skill tree, right? For those of you who might remember this from one of the games. So there are various specialties within the front-end realm, and so I'm going to cover just some of the specialties. So there are people who what I consider front-end designers. These are people who are very strong at like the visual design, but at the same time they can make the designs a reality through HTML and CSS, right? But usually these people aren't as heavy on the JavaScript portion of it. And so they, within that Venn diagram, they live within their own right as a specialist between those two realms. You have the front developers who can kind of traverse all three. So they're good at taking a visual design and translating it, but they're not necessarily the ones coding it, or sorry, designing it, right, from a blank sheet of paper. They're the ones building it with HTML, CSS, and then adding interactivity with JavaScript. And this is the more sort of like common skill set that you see across front-end developers. But as far as specialties, there are a lot more that a lot of people don't realize, right? So there are animation specialists. Just as we talked about earlier, there's a ton of frameworks out there right now. So you have people who are not even called front-end developers now, right? They're like Angular developers, they're React developers. And so these are people who just specialize in that one framework. And so, one of the things I wanted to illustrate with this slide is that even as a front-end developer, you can be so niche within a specific specialty. Like there are people who are just WordPress, right? That's what they know how to do. And then there are people who all they do is data visualization. So D3 library, they're the ones building those gorgeous interactions. But that's all they do. Accessibility is another topic that actually doesn't get a lot of recognition. But these are for those that don't know, front-end development. One of the things is that websites have to be something that they can navigate. People with disabilities to be able to navigate and read. And so it's hard to think about navigating the web as a blind person or maybe as a person who doesn't use a mouse. But these are things that companies actually can be liable for depending on the level of service they provide and can be actually sued by civilians in the event their sites are not accessible. So there are people whose entire job is to make sure that your site is accessible for these people. And of course, there's a movement where all sites should be accessible, but it's one of those things where we're trying to iterate and do better as we go on. And so you mentioned Bootstrap earlier. Design systems, that's a whole specialty as well, right? How do you manage the language and interface between design and the coding world, right? And so pattern libraries. And there's a whole, there are whole conferences centered around design systems, build tools. So like Grunt, Web Build, Webpack, right? In the old days, you could just write your code, put it online, and you were like, ship it, and you were good. Nowadays, there's all these things that you have to do as far as like making sure your build's small so that it can be delivered down the pipeline. You have to make sure that it has polyfills, meaning that it's cross-browser compatible, because what a lot of people don't realize too is that when you build a site, it looks a little bit different in Chrome, Firefox, IE, and then if you want to go backwards, right, IE 11, Edge. Browser compatibility is a big thing as a web developer that we have to deal with a lot of the times, because if your user base can't, if you build for Chrome, but like let's say 90% of your users are Safari and it's broken on Safari, like that's something that you're going to lose out on as far as market share. So those are things we have to kind of keep track of, right? And build tools help with those things, but that's like a whole separate animal and specialty that people learn about. And I mentioned performance as well. There are people who are very good at tuning the performance of things. So as far as like, if you're ever on a website, you'll notice some websites, you'll wait like 5 seconds and then the whole thing will blink in, right? And then other websites will progressively load in. And the ones who are better at it are the ones who have the most retention, because they learned that when users, I think when they wait about 2 to 5 seconds, a lot of them bounce immediately. They don't even really wait for the page to load. So there's a big push in the front end realm to try to make sure your sites are performant, because take it for Amazon, for instance, I think they're trying to get the render rate under like a second, because they want you to be able to get to what you want and at like click to buy as quickly as possible, because that's the way they make their money, right? So these sort of things are things that you could specialize in, that some people actually do specialize in. And so in the event of animation, I wanted to sort of throw this out there. So animation is one of those things that's not thought of a lot in web, but as most of you are aware with smartphones, animation is actually a really big part of making that experience really wholesome. And so on the web, there's starting to be a really big push as far as like trying to make our web experience a little bit less like blinky and more like using the physics, right? Like things slide in, things move, things disappear. And so these are some animation specialists that I would highly recommend following. Those are their Twitter handles. And so they're really great at sort of teaching you the importance of animation and then also the various ways that you could actually do animation. And then as far as framework specialists, I know that, so the main three, for those that aren't aware, is React, Angular, and Vue. And so most of my work has taken me through the React and Vue realm. And so these are the two founders. Evan Yu is the founder of Vue, and Dan Abramov is one of the big voices of React. Unfortunately, I don't know. Do you happen to know who does Angular? Okay. And so these are two guys, huh?
We just say Google.
You say Google? Yeah, pretty much. So these are the two guys who are responsible for, I think right now, React and Vue are probably the two most talked about frameworks right now. And in a sense, they're sort of competing against each other, but in a sense, from what I've seen, they've been learning a lot from one another, sort of stealing from one another. And it's been really great watching them grow. And so one of the things I think that's really interesting as being a front-end developer is that you really sit at the crossroad between just sort of dreaming up these sort of beautiful interfaces and actually being able to build them, right? Because there are a lot of people who, when they're pure designers, they wish they could build them. And there's a lot of people who want to build things that are beautiful. And then so we kind of front-end developers sit right at the middle of that. And so, but what people don't realize, again, is that while HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are the core skills, there's so many things that we have to start learning now that have made our jobs more difficult. But at the same time, it's a reason why people keep us around, because otherwise all our work could get easily farmed out. And so whether it's managing state, complex system architecture, or performance, those are things that we've started to pick up and people started to specialize in order to sort of justify their role in various companies and teams. And so the other thing about front-end developers that I think is often overlooked is having like a design sense. And so when thinking about doing a sort of like a role as a front-end developer, when you get designs and you see things that are slightly off, there's a sense to it. That's all I can really explain about it. So whether it's you notice that a pixel's off in the corner, that sort of thing is really what differentiates a good front-end developer from like someone who just knows front-end technologies, because they're the ones who can take a design and be able to tell and give feedback about when something's off, right? They don't just take it like, so they don't take scripts from the designers and just implement it without even thinking about it. Oftentimes, we're the ones helping to consult on, like, designers might think they want it one way, but our understanding of how it actually works around the web as far as like design patterns and those sort of things, we actually provide the feedback to help them actually create an even better experience. So it's a really unique role that we have, because again, the other thing is that we're aware of now is that websites are across devices of all different screen sizes, right? At one point, the designer could just design like like the laptop, and that's it, right? Now we have mobile, we have tablet, but tablets have multiple sizes, mobile, which means that designers are not going to give you every single breakpoint, right? Every single screen state, which means a lot of times you'll get like a couple of guidelines, but then the rest is that you actually kind of have to like figure out yourself and then propose like, okay, I noticed that at this point there's an awkward break, you know, maybe like images fall under and those sort of things. And so this is why the design sense is really critical, because if you're expecting the designer to hand walk you through everything, it makes it a lot harder for people to sort of trust you to execute on designs. So this is one of those things that if you want to be a good front-end developer, sort of develop that sense and to care about those things. To notice that like on IE 11, the whole grid shifts a little bit, like 10 pixels to the right. And most people might go, oh, who really cares? But like as a good front-end developer, you do care about those sort of things, and you want to make those things perfect. And so this is something I want to stress. And so I mentioned that the 3 core tenets of front-end development are, you know, development, user experience, and visual design. But the other thing that I love about the front end is that there's a really great community around it. Because a lot of us, most of us are just self-taught, we have to rely on other people, right? And so we reach out, and the community has been very supportive. It's always very warm. Everyone's willing to help out. One of the nice things about web development too is that all your sources literally, it's easy for anyone to copy and paste your code, right? Your code's not like proprietary in any way. Anyone can open the inspector and see what the heck you did. And so this creates like a really open environment, because no one's afraid that, oh, you're gonna walk in my website and steal my code. Like if you wanna do that, you can do that. There's nothing stopping you. And so people are really open about sharing techniques. And then from the conferences that I've been to, people are very warm. And it really helps to make the experience of developing for front end like really enjoyable. And so yeah, that's like a really high level of like how crazy front end development can be. But so what I wanted to do is actually help tailor like the questions and like things that you might have about front end development. So is there anything off the top of your or thoughts from here?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, because I've been like doing development related work for a year.
Yeah.
But then taking like front end development, like specifically, like really serious. I did like an innovation project.
Okay.
At the agency to see how we can use CSS Grid in our email development.
Yeah.
Workflow. Sure. Because I was basically tasked with like figuring that out, and I was like, okay, well, I write CSS, but I write it in like the way that you would write it in like 2002.
Sure.
It's like I was like, all right, well. So it forced me to have to like learn like new CSS, like very modern. Like,
yeah.
Like, and then like I just like got like really into it, and I was like, wow, this is really fun. So like I started like just getting as much information as I can about like building websites and not even like focusing on email. Like I already did that report.
Yeah.
And we had some pretty interesting findings from that, but like it just kind of spiraled into like something where I was like, well, I know I have a like marketing background, but I do like development, but like I find that like what I have the biggest like I guess questions about is like converting like some of your skills that you got from other experiences into like I guess like usable areas of development. Like if I wanted to go into front end development, like translating skills or like I found that I think I mentioned this in like the live chat. It's like there's a lot of tutorials out there, but there's not a whole lot of advice on like putting the pieces together.
Sure.
You know? So I have a lot of pieces, and I just want to yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to that end, I think for me, when it comes to putting the pieces together, I usually start with solving the problem that's like the biggest fire. Because as you can see, as I sort of went through on this sort of diagram here, there's so many things to focus on that if you try to do it all at once, you'll be just crippled by like this decision overload. And so again, to your point, at one point, your goal was to literally get CSS Grid in an email template. I would approach it in that regard. If you approach it more from a problem-solving perspective, it will help you slowly climb the ladder. And then also you'll figure out what problems you like solving, right? Some people really hate debugging CSS for that matter, right? There's a whole movement right now of people who just want to use JavaScript to manage styles, for example. And so people solve their problems in different ways based on, and so part of my advice to people who are looking to do front-end development is that you want to find your niche and what you enjoy doing, right? And so it's kind of the cliche of like, find your passion of what you want to do. But like front-end development is very much that. Because if you try to do it all, I think most people just kind of fail at it. Just because there's too much to learn and too much to do at once. And so again, whether it's like you really enjoy like animation, you enjoy email templates, frameworks, those are things to think about as you sort of traverse the realm and figure out what you like doing. Yeah, but then to your point, that's one of so Front-End League, we do want to try to help solve problems like that, because again, there's a ton of tutorials out there, but then where's that middle ground of like helping people like you put it together? Yeah.
And you have to choose. Usually, there's so many different libraries that you know, like you said, you're just you've got to choose. Like, wait, what would I choose first? I don't know if I'm just starting out. I don't know. What would I choose first, right? What should I just work Angular material for a while? Should I do some bootstrap? Right? Which way? Because they're all different. And if you ramp up on one and then it becomes unpopular in a few years, it'll go away, right? And then you're like, well, crap, you know?
Yeah.
2 years, you know, playing around with this stuff and now nobody's using it. So that's what Kobo. Yeah. Kobo's still around.
I know.
That's the thing. And you know, so I think that's part of it is, you know, figuring out where to start and how to build up. Like, you know, so like one thing that I typically do with my group here is if we're going to approach a project, there are certain things that we're not sure how we're going to make them work in software.
Yeah.
And there are lots of things that we know, right? So what we'll do is we'll do experiments. I always take the scientist in me. We'll just do an experiment.
Yeah.
So let's isolate this piece and just do a simple experiment to get the concept working. Once you've proven that concept, then you can ramp it up to something that's productive that you can productionize. And then go to the next one and the next one. And then I let them start building the actual application. So they'll build, if there are 5 things we need to figure out how to do, then they'll do those 5 things before anyone's allowed to build the application. Or we even design the database, build those 5 things, right? So it could be any crazy thing that the customer wants. It could be anything.
Sure.
But for me, like I'm very experienced on front end. I was, you know, like 20 years ago, I was programming for 640 by 40 screen. Right?
Yeah.
But now, like, if you try to jump back in, what happens is, you know, HTML is still HTML, and CSS is better than it was before. But there are a ton of JavaScript frameworks, and then there are a ton of these things that they call compilers, which really just link your JavaScript code. They don't really compile. Right. But they just link all these libraries in for you. And like how all that stuff works, that's quite a learning curve. So,
yeah, it's huge.
Like for me, I would look for what I would be interested in is pick a path, go down that path, and build a sample application that uses all the things we need in the path. And then that's how I would build competency through, you know, through doing. It could be something simple. You could just build a dice game.
Sure.
You could just build a game like Yahtzee or something, right? Something simple, you know the rules about, and you build it. That gives you layout, and gives you layout, and gives you styling, and gives you whatever you're doing in that framework, and animation, and all these other pieces, right? You can put that together in a simple game that you can learn how to play in 5 minutes. So just that's what, I mean, for me, that's the kind of stuff that I would look to do. Sure.
Yeah, so again, one of the things we want to do is also create additional problem sets for people who might have harder coming up with those sort of exercises, just to help sort of pervade that middle ground. And to your point, the thing about front end too is that it is changing rapidly, right? Like just 5 years ago, front client-side frameworks were only just beginning, and even then it wasn't that popular. And so the only thing I implore people who get into front-end development is to realize that while it's changing rapidly, it's for the better. And so what you do is you try to learn sort of the core concepts that come out of it, right? So if you're using Bootstrap, if Bootstrap falls out of popularity, it's usually because someone else has like a newer design look. But essentially though, the core skills you learn from reading documentation, from being able to adapt those, like the component patterns and how to adapt those are usually the same. So as long as you keep adapting your skills and learning like the core, not like, that's also one of the reasons why I have a small issue with people who are just pure like framework developers, because they're concerned like, oh, what if my framework goes out of style? But if you're actually learning how the framework works and why it's good, you also learn whenever something, the next better thing comes along, you'll be able to adapt those things. So for example, jQuery, as I'm sure you're aware, that was huge, right? That was such a game changer for front end and everyone loved it. But it had its time, and people are starting to deprecate it now. But people took what they learned from that, and they're adapting it to new things. And so it's just in front-end development, that's just happening at a quicker pace. because yeah, we're learning from various fields, and especially we're picking up the pieces from a lot of software development, right? A lot of classical techniques that people from computer science already knew years ago, like, are just starting to get into web development practices. So we're trying to quickly ramp up to follow those best practices. So.
It's like the biggest like undertaking that I've had like outside of formal school.
Sure.
Fun though. I enjoy it.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, it does. I know it's controversial. So I come, like, I come from a background where I started in C, C++, and Fortran, C, C++, Python. And JavaScript, when you come from that background and you're like, oh, I know what JavaScript crap. Because it's a hodgepodge language that's grown up from, that they just keep adding stuff to make up for the fact that it doesn't have features that other well-established languages.
It was written in what, like 2 weeks, I think? It was like something crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like you have all these things, promises and other things people are doing. And it's like, well, why do we need all that? We don't need that. It's because you don't have the ability to really do true object-oriented programming.
Right.
You have to figure it out. I mean, it's the only language I've ever known that has another language written for it, TypeScript, so that you can write
types with it. Yeah.
So you use TypeScript to write JavaScript, you don't ever have to.
Right. And that's the other thing, to his point, is that the web, what makes it particularly unique from a software development perspective is that it needs to be forever backwards compatible. And so, because you don't want your website in 20 years to be like, oh, HTML is out of date, we're throwing out HTML. And like, we want, like, the whole purpose of the web is to make it like a huge archive of information that will forever be accessible. And so that's been one of the challenges, because Brendan Eich, the person who wrote JavaScript, talks about that, how they can't just go back and rewrite JavaScript the proper way, because it's just going to break like a lot of the old web. And so, we made some decisions that we didn't love back then, but we have to make the best of it. And it's one of the challenges that we have as we keep growing and pushing forward.
It would really be better if browsers supported, if they came up with a language that browsers could use. When the page loads, you could say, I'm going to run JavaScript, or I'm going to run some other language, and that other language for the web would be JavaScript. So the browser would decide when it loads which engine it will load for using your code. And you do the same thing.
So have you heard of WebAssembly? So you might want to look into that. That's like a native compiler that all the browsers are looking into. I think it's based on C and a couple of other ones. And it's to help sort of patch those sort of things. Again, it's not meant as a JavaScript replacement, but more of a synergistic engine. So you might want to take a look at WebAssembly. That's one of the up-and-coming technologies. So yeah, much more back-end focus for those that are wondering. But WebAssembly is coming down the pipe, that's for sure. Houdini, that's a big deal.
I like looked at like there's someone made like a not quick guide, but like they made a whole web page devoted towards like
what Houdini does.
Yeah, what it does. It's pretty crazy because you have like the layout part of it, where you can like literally write rewrite how like the CSS engine in the browser will read your.
There you go.
It's pretty interesting stuff. Like So if you need like certain functionality that doesn't currently exist in CSS. You can just like write it, like, well, I don't know how it works, but it'll work. It's like that's one of the things. Yeah, definitely a little bit too intense for me, but
yeah. So there's all these various niches within front-end development, which I think it's particularly interesting, but it can be overwhelming at first. You're like, holy crap, where do I start? And so again, I say start with the problem you're trying to imminently solve. So to your point, if you're building a website, for your dad's artwork, I think the first thing would probably be like, do you need like an e-commerce piece? Are people going to be buying it? And that might be your first thing, because that might lead you into like the Shopify realm, for example, where you're customizing Shopify templates. That might be like one route that you take with it. Or you might take a route. WordPress? Okay.
My dad doesn't want to sell any of it right yet.
Okay.
Right now, he just wants to get the exposure.
Sure.
So that makes it a little easier.
Yeah.
In that respect, I've been a little hesitant to use any of the stock websites out there like Artsy or Wix or any of those things that are designed for that, because it's just not the way he does things. So
I see.
So I'm trying to make sure that I want to get him out there in a unique way.
Yeah.
And then later do it for myself.
Sure.
I also have an art career, and on top of that, though, I also have like as I'm looking at this and listening to you talk, I realized I need an enormous team. The other website I want to do.
Well, it depends, right? Like any good project, usually there's scope you can cut to get the minimum viable product out. So happy to discuss with you just sort of like what you're thinking of and what you might need. But again, right now there are actually a lot of tools to help automate what you used to need a bunch of people to help you with.
Oh, really?
And so it's just about, again, it's about figuring out what problem you're trying to solve and how we can help you navigate to the right solution.
Okay.
So yeah, this piece like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
WordPress is pretty flexible.
That's what I've heard.
It's pretty flexible, but it still gives you a structure to manage your pages and things like
Right.
that with. And there are snap-ins for e-commerce when you're ready to sell.
Mm-hmm.
When you're ready to sell stuff.
Yeah, a good friend of mine does UX stuff, and he was telling me that it's like everything that I need in WordPress for that stuff.
Pretty much.
So he was. I tried to describe a couple of things. He's like, yeah, no, yeah, WordPress.
And it's gonna be like when you start out, we do every year we do a charity event with a bunch of people doing WordPress local nonprofits.
Right.
And it's real easy when you're starting out, and if your needs are, what you're gonna find is as you go along, you'll hit the wall with something like WordPress, just like any framework has an envelope that it resides in.
Sure.
And once you get to the edge of that, you want to do something, you're gonna have to go back to it and get under the covers. So you have to write your own PHP. But up to that point, there are just lots of things you can do. That's where you can modify things.
The one thing
where to work with WordPress and PHP, so that
You don't have to know any of this one stuff. Your site, stock
templates and stuff.
things like that. You want to build your own. You can do everything in WordPress, including build web services that integrate things together. And I'm not a huge WordPress expert people, but once you get to a certain point, you have to get into the actual. You have to get into the actual. You actually have to. You want to build your own templates and do certain things. You won't find anyone. You won't find many people who've done something. You got to create it yourself, and then that's when you're in HTML, CSS.
And so the PHP piece is usually, because there's PHP embedded in the HTML, so that's where you have to get used to reading those sort of things, even if you're not building backend functionality. Even when you're modifying the templates, they have PHP snippets in them. So that's where you have to gain some basic literacy with that.
Sure.
So that's like, one of the complications with WordPress, but it's very well documented from the people that I've known that've worked with it. So it's a matter of taking the time to figure out what you're trying to do. And then again, we do have a Discord server for Frontend League. So if you have questions, please join there, ask questions. We're happy to help.
Okay.
The one advice I would give you, though, is that I'm sure you would agree with me. When it comes to payment, let someone else handle that. You don't want to save any credit card information. You don't want to deal with any of that. Let those services like Stripe take your 1% or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a huge hassle to deal with payment.
It's probably going to be more of a social network type thing.
Okay.
So, way more stuff than I know what to do. and information. I mean, the people's data will be potentially on there. I mean, would certainly be on there.
Sure.
Yeah, all those things that I don't understand.
Yeah. You just take it one step at a time.
Exactly.
That's how any of these concepts kind of come to life. Yeah.
Okay.
I have so many side projects. I don't know, for me, that's one of the reasons I got into development, just because I just enjoy tinkering with code so much, and there's always things that I want to do. So I'm pretty involved with the Vue community. So one of the things that I like, the side projects, so I'm helping to coordinate all the Vue meetups that are around the world. And so this is like a statically generated site. And so you can see here that if you come here and we want to look for United States, you can go through and you can see these are all the various Vue meetups that we have. There are some pieces I need to do as far as automating. So to the point of that I was mentioning before, ideally, for example, this list of events would be automatically scraped from a web page and automatically updated, right? But I haven't figured out how to do that or spent the time to do that yet. But at the bare minimum, I can at least manually update it and get it up and running so people can actually make use of it. And so this is one of those things to what I was trying to tell you is that, yes, there are the ideals of what we want, but sometimes we can find ways to just get it up and running first, and then we can figure out how to iterate from there. And so this is just like, this is like one of, and then front end. Yeah. They could, but then usually that requires us to manage some sort of backend at that point. So right now, this is just like a page sitting on a server. So there's no backend happening with it. This is all just like a static page. But to your point, right, at some point, I mean, the better thing, because again, sort of like with meetup.com, they already manage all that stuff, right? So you want to make it easier for your users to be able to manage their events without having to enter it in multiple places. So those are the things it's like we have to think about when it comes to like managing this project. Yeah. Are you thinking about trying to like get more into front-end development from like a career perspective or anything, or?
Yeah, I mean, like I currently work for an agency and do like marketing.
Yeah.
But it's like we're like a mid-sized agency. It's like 100 people. And, the team I'm on it's called digital production. So we do all of the implementation of marketing. So like literally like we have clients that if they set up like like a 6-month automated campaign that communicates with their e-commerce data, pulls that into like email campaign, like events or anything like that. Like I would be on the team that's in charge of like actually like wiring it all together and making it actually work. So we use like Salesforce, we use IBM Watson.
Wow.
We do a little bit of MailChimp. It's not really one of our like we don't do.
Sure.
I don't really like MailChimp that much personally, but
yeah.
But we do a lot of custom stuff. I also work on a product that we have, like an internal product that we're like selling to our clients that takes the concept of MailChimp.
Yeah.
So it's a WYSIWYG editor where you can be like button,
right,
horizontal line, hero image, any of that. A lot of our clients don't have like they don't find that they can actually like communicate their brand through those like pre-made modules.
Sure.
So I work on like companies will like we'll have a design team or they'll make the designs or whatever.
Yeah.
And I make those like click draggable modules and we sell it as like a product. So I work on a product as well.
Yep.
It's called like Code Perfect, but I'm just trying to I'm in the like technical role.
Yeah.
Like it's only in a marketing lens.
I see.
And I think that without like really awesome clients, like it can become a little bit like just not that fun. Like you're like even at the coolest like level of it, it's still like I just find that like the web is a little bit more like just has a little bit more variety. They care a little bit more about like I'm very into like more like the visual design side of things. And like they seem to care a lot more about how their website looks rather than how their marketing campaign looks.
Got it.
Really, depending on the client.
Sure.
Yeah, and just making more of those like creative type decisions. I'm definitely at the end of the creative funnel.
Got it.
Or like after design. I mean, I work with design directly.
Right.
But it's just one of those things where just getting into like the industry, and bringing some of the stuff that I've learned along the way. Like, I have experience working with clients, but it's like it's in the marketing lens, but not in the like development lens.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think just keep doing what you're doing as far as like trying to get more like as far as like whether it's talking to the team and see if you can get helping them out with anything. I think that's probably the best place to start since some people when they want to get in the front end development, they're in a completely different profession. At least you're tangentially involved with it. And then
the front end team, like with like I do like website migrations, like content entry, which I think my content.
That's why we have content management systems for our clients.
Well, it's like using the CMS.
Oh, you have to use the CMS center.
Oh my god, so it's too much interface. Like,
Got it.
It's not efficient. So like I definitely don't like to do any of that work.
Okay.
To our clients, like it's like I work on the website, but I'm only using the WYSIWYG, and it's like the frustrating part about it is I know how I could edit it without this interface.
Sure.
So, like having the knowledge is like a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
Like I'm like I have to deal with this interface.
Right. This clunky interface that some backend developer probably.
Put all the content in
right.
Myself. But it's
that's funny.
But yeah. So it's in a weird spot when it comes to like the transition.
Yeah.
It's like I mean I work for an agency. It's good, but it's like I don't know. I wouldn't even want to be on our front end team, to be honest.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because I don't like the limitations that our CMS platform has.
Got it.
And because I can see like the direct how limited they are with
Sure.
certain functionality and certain design side of things. But I talked to a lot of our front end developers about like projects they're working on.
Yeah. I would check out freecodecamp.org. Have you checked that out?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you I don't know if you know, but like once you get the certification from them, they have like I think they have some client lists that you can help to build some of like those open source projects or pro bono stuff. So there's something to look into as far as like, and then on Front End League here, we're also trying to figure out how to solve that problem for people as well. So whenever we have the solution ready, we'll be sure to let you all know. But yeah, so just keep at it. That's all I can implore you to do.
Yeah, they have like JavaScript challenges and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm like more for. Like I have like some websites that I have like the front ends built. Like everything's like built out.
Sure.
And I'm just adding that interaction layer. Like scroll events, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm basically I did a whole course on JavaScript, but I'm
nice.
kind of like I'm trying to hone in on like just like DOM manipulation, introversion.
Okay.
Like
event listeners,
yeah, all that stuff. I'm trying to like nail because I really want to end. Like that's what I want to be more focused on.
Sure.
Like the visual side of like interaction, like but yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of in the design.
Got it.
Like you mentioned, I was like actually really like psyched that like you were saying that when you're actually a front end developer, like you still have that like kind of creative freedom to make decisions.
You totally do.
Yeah.
And then for to your point, you just got to figure out how early on in the process you want to be involved in. Some people are okay, like as long as you give me a design, I can figure it out from there. Some people want to be involved in the design process. That's something you'll have to figure out where you're happiest and where you feel like makes you tick. And like for yourself, like are you like currently going through any front end resources or anything as far as like are you going through any like front end like learning tools or anything?
Yeah, Codecademy.
Codecademy, okay, yep,
Yeah.
it's a good place to start.
Yeah, I learned HTML and CSS that way.
Okay.
Started learning SQL.
Okay.
But that's obviously a very different type of thing. And
yes.
I don't know how to merge the two, so it's. So that's kind of where
APIs are basically where they'll be merged at some point.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't even know where I would use that, but I was just kind of like okay, well, this seems like this is very valuable, this is very valuable. How do you get these two together? And,
yeah.
As I'm learning more and more, but a lot of the words that you were discussing in your presentation, I'm like, no, I have to look that one up. I'll have to look that one up.
You're gonna, don't, take it one step at a time. I sort of, part of the reason for that was intentionally just to show how broad the spectrum could be for people. So I think you wrote it down, but Free Codecamp actually I think is a great place to start because they actually have more like a curriculum. Oh. Codecademy, they make you pay. Eventually, they became like a pay-to-play model.
Pretty much what Team Treehouse.
Yeah. So Team Treehouse is good, but again, you have to pay. So Free Codecamp is a great place to start. At least it gives you a guided place of where to go, and eventually they do try to teach you how to connect data layer. Like so, if you want to learn like more the back end and how to connect the data, so querying. So SQL is basically querying data. If you want to learn how to connect those two, like Free Codecamp gives you a basic outline for how to do that. So definitely worth checking out in the meantime. But yeah, so we have a Discord channel. So if it's not on there, I'll put it on there tonight. But if you go to friendleague.com, we're going to try to put all our resourcing and everything there. So feel free to follow us there. And yeah. So yeah, thanks you guys for coming. I know that it's a small, intimate event tonight, but it was good chatting with you all. We will.
What would you recommend for someone? So like, I was just telling Hunter about the